Welcome to Cut Daisies and Unicorns, and this is episode 10, which means we always have something special in mind. And today we have an interview, and it's always a good time to be able to have an interview. But we have a beautiful unicorn, right, Steve?
Yeah,
a beautiful unicorn that we have today for our interview, and it's going to be a good conversation. I already know it, even though we haven't even had it yet. I know it's going to be a good conversation.
Yeah.
So,
Alyssa Conley is with us. Now we don't give out phone numbers and we don't give out addresses. So if some weirdo on the internet tries to, oh yeah, exactly. We talk about this all the time. I'm afraid of who's going to try to find me. So.
Maybe they already try. Who knows? I don't know. But yeah, so we are grateful
Steve,
for the time.
Maybe they already found you, and you don't know it.
Maybe.
Well,
yeah,
it's true.
It's possible.
Yeah.
It's true. But I still have Gypsy Dog, and Gypsy Dog definitely protects me.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. She does.
Yeah, she can be intimidating right up front, but she's a very loving dog.
Oh, so sweet. So, Alyssa, for our listeners, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Alyssa Conley. I am a child of God. I am a mom to Jasper, who's 3, and Benji, who just turned 1. I'm a wife to Chad, who is the most dope husband and dad. And I feel like I'm sure this is normal in marriage, I think, now that I've been in one for 7 years. I learn new things about him constantly.
Aww.
And that's really exciting and really fun for me to get to do as his partner.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, and you know what? So many interesting points of connection with Alyssa.
Yeah.
So I got to be a part of Alyssa's wedding.
Yeah.
And Alyssa performed my wedding to Amy.
Right.
The absolutely best wedding I've ever been to.
Is yours or hers?
No. Was her presiding at my wedding. Yeah. It was so good. So good. Yeah.
That's great.
Thank you again. I am still flattered that you and Amy had me do that.
Oh man. It was a statement.
Yep.
A statement to all. It's like,
and I feel like a very appropriate one because women should be leading in all the spaces alongside men.
Absolutely.
I'm sure we'll get there in this conversation, but
yeah, and especially at my place of employment at the time, there's this thing about, not having women preach or teach and, even questioning how far up in leadership and stuff. Now, we recognize that these are, it's church by church in regards to how those decisions are made and things like that. But when day, 62 came and Amy's like, yeah, hey, why are we waiting until December? And I'm like, I don't know why. Yeah, that's a great question. Why? And so then I'm like, well, if we're going to do this, then this is, and actually Phil was in a really close race to have Phil come out and do the wedding, but I definitely wanted to land a blow in regards to, hey, this is going to be different. And a lot of people don't even know that Amy kept her last name.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we'll get cards from friends and stuff and it'll say, to Steve and Amy Coble and stuff. And I just giggle because I'm like, well, that's how well you know us, because you don't. But I think Amy was super surprised too when we were having the discussion. I'm like, hey, so about your name. I'm like, are you really wanting to become an Amy Coble? I've lived with this last name my whole life. I don't think I would ever want to impress that on anyone again, Again. So, anyway, But yeah, so Alyssa,
Yeah.
she presided over our wedding,
Yeah,
and we're blessed.
that's right.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Likewise.
How's Chad doing?
He's great.
Yeah.
He works at ISG Group now,
Okay.
downtown in the East Village. He loves it, and they care a lot in a very different way than his prior employer about developing people internally, regardless of what their college background or piece of paper says. So that's been good for him
Nice.
to like just climb to the next thing, whatever the next thing is for him.
Yeah.
They're a great company for him to work for.
Nice. Well, awesome.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, and you mentioned your babies and how much, I mean, I know how much you guys really wanted to have kids and just kind of on that timeline, working through all that, and then you blessed, and I mean, gosh, and were your last photo session, was that Justin Meyer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
He's so lovely.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Justin and I go way back, and his work is just phenomenal.
Yep.
Showed up
for sure. You guys can link him in your show notes or whatever, because he is worth seeking out if you're looking for someone to do photography.
Yeah, absolutely. And he does stuff from catalogs. He goes out to New York and does shoots for fabric for different manufacturers. He's done magazine layouts, and he is a sought after. He himself is his own unicorn, and an incredible musician, vocalist as well. But a lot of people don't know that about him. Only the people who knew him earlier. So anyway, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, hey, so you said your oldest is 3. And so in the 3 years of being a mama, I mean, what's a couple things that are like dearest to your heart about being able to be a mom?
Something that I learned early on, understood differently, was the way that God feels about me. Because of how I feel about my son, I have a better understanding of how God feels about me as his daughter.
Yeah.
So that's something that continues. I like relearn that perpetually, right?
Yeah.
I can get frustrated, and instead of coming calm and cool, get a little loud and hot. And Jasper still loves me. Jasper doesn't think any different of me raising my voice. You know what I mean? The next day he's forgotten about it. My child's mercies are new every morning, just like God's, which is beautiful, and I'm lucky that's true, and I'm thankful for. Watching him grow is so fun, and learn stuff just with his childlike curiosity and wonder. You both are parents, you both know.
Yeah.
Toddlers, then they become these sponges. Everything you say, they say it. Everything you do, they do it. When they see it, what's that? What's this? What's that? What's that for? How does that work?
Yeah.
So watching him learn is super fun, and all the time, like, keep asking questions, Jasper.
Yeah.
Don't ever stop.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
That's great. So tell me what some of your passions are in life. I know, probably being a mom is part of that, but tell me about the other passions, because we know that those also make up who you are. So that'll also give some listeners an idea of kind of what's at your core too.
Yeah. So my faith is really important to me. My family is really important to me. Things outside of that realm, I love reading, you guys. I don't care what kind of book it is. I don't care if it's a memoir or sci-fi or like a romantic comedy. I will read all of the books, no judgment. Wow. I like some more than others, but I will read them all. If someone recommends me a book, they're like, "Do you think you'd like this?" I'm like, "I don't know. Let me read it. Let me tell you. Let me find out." So I love reading a lot. Finding time for it is different now than it was 3 years ago.
Sure.
But make it work. I love writing music, specifically worship music. Sometimes not that, but I actually find a very different joy in writing worship music, because then that's not only something that like is filling my cup, but I'm also able to like pour out. When I'm writing worship, I'm worshiping. So it's a both.
Yeah.
Two birds.
Two birds, one stone.
Two birds,
Limited
one stone.
amount of time.
Limited amount of time if I want to be a mom and also read and also write, which I do.
Yeah.
So I love reading. I love writing. Writing music is very, very fun. I also really like listening to podcasts.
Nice.
Very good.
There you go.
Yeah.
So what have you read recently that sticks out to you right now that you're like, like...
I just finished a book. I'm literally going to look up what it's called because I have a note with all the books I've read for the year.
Yeah.
But I just finished a book like 2 days ago. It was so good. It was fiction. Liberty by Caitlin Greenidge. It was about a woman, basically her single mom. Her dad died when she was young. Her mom is a doctor. Her mom is also helping people who are still slaves be free. They basically like fake deaths of people and they travel with the coffin. They take them to this woman and she helps them kind of restart. So pretty sensitive book, that alone, right?
Yeah.
That's wild. Around slavery. Then this woman, her mom wants her to become a doctor, sets her up to go to this school. After 1 year, she's like, this is not it. This is not what I'm passionate about. Then to like get away from her mom because she doesn't understand like the inner workings of what's happening in that family and in her relationship with her mom. She ends up dropping out. She gets married. Her husband promises a different thing for her. And it's not different. He's gone all day. She's with his family who he didn't tell her anything about. It's not good. It's not the life that she wants. She ends up getting pregnant with twins and she ultimately leaves. It goes back to her mom. So the book ends, the last 2 pages are her writing a letter to her husband who she is leaving, about why she's leaving, about the world that she wants for her twins.
Wow.
Guys, it's good. It's good. It's super sensitive. There's a lot of touchy stuff in it. And that's probably why I liked it because, if we're reading about it, we can be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And isn't that, I think one of the things that I wondered about was because you do have such a large audience from the stage that you serve from. Do you find that you're drawn to how other people are able to be transparent, vulnerable, and share like that stuff? But then do you get caught in a tension about like how vulnerable and transparent can I really be because of and I'm going to use air quotes because we're in a 3-shot where people see Phil, Steve, and you're in the little box below on our podcast for video. I'm using air quotes concerning stage personality. And so can you talk to me about your internal of where you find yourself at with that tension? Or maybe there's no tension for you, but I see your like nonverbals and I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, there's a little tension, but not because anybody tells me that there needs to be. I could share as much as I wanted up front and probably be applauded for that vulnerability. But the fine line and the tension for me is this isn't about me.
Right.
How do I point people to Christ, but also be authentic and share pieces of me? So at one point I did indirectly talked about infertility. It was the beginning of Advent of 2017, a month before a month before I got pregnant with Chad's child. I don't even love when people do that. My husband and I are pregnant. No, you're not. You female are having a baby. Anyways, I indirectly shared about it by saying, I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know if you're waiting for someone to come home from overseas. I don't know if you're waiting to see your dad in heaven. I don't know if you're waiting to meet the sibling you just found out about. I don't know if you're like me waiting for a child. That was it. But I cried. Ooh, I'm probably going to cry right now. I feel like crying. I'm not going to do it. Not going to do it today. I cried in front of probably 10,000 people that weekend at different services. Cause I was like, no, I need to share that. I need to tell people what I'm walking through, because we worship differently together when we know each other, not see each other. Know.
Yeah.
For people just listening, I'm like touching like my heart to know each other, not just look at each other. So yes, that tension is real, not because anybody says it has to be, but because I want to be very careful to make sure that people are focusing on the right thing.
Right.
Not me. Which in itself can sound like a little, she thinks, but I know you guys know my heart, and that I want people to be looking at Jesus the whole time. If they're looking at Alyssa, they're looking at the wrong thing.
Yeah. And that creates a tension. A lot of times on our podcast, we divert from church words, church definitions, Christianese might be the framework of language that we run hard away from it for the pursuit to be able to have conversation that when people listen in, they're like, hold it, I haven't heard it talked about like this before. And unapologetically, when we ask you to be able to come on the podcast, there are Christians out there who are like, oh, thank God, somebody just said they love Jesus. We wonder where Phil and Steve are, but all the believers out there in the Lord Jesus Christ are rising up from their couches or out of slumber and saying, oh my God, somebody just said the Jesus word. Yay, now we're on board. We're going to listen to this whole effing episode. But in that, the thing is anyone who knows you knows that Lutheran Church of Hope puts humanity at a tension and crossroads every time people walk in the door, because the opportunity to focus on something else other than Jesus Christ, that there's a lot going on there. And quite frankly, you and I have talked about this before at great length. The beauty of you leading worship is not just your voice. And for anybody who's heard you sing, they're like, Coble, are you serious? Have you heard this lady's voice? Oh my gosh. I'm like, heard it? Yeah, if there's any vocal dance that I love to do, it's a vocal dance with Alyssa, just by my side, because the things that she can do physically with her voice, and that's not the beautiful part. The beautiful part is, as you said, as you were touching your heart, it's your heart, and you figured out and I'm just gonna mansplain it, okay? So
please mansplain to everybody.
I'm mansplaining away. The thing is that Alyssa, you're classically trained vocalist. You can do all the beyond high church. You can do all the classical stuff. You've been involved in the Des Moines choral group for, probably decades, at least over 10. 10 years. So classically trained, educated, able to hit all the notes, all the stuff, and so there's the fundamentals that are there. And then she can turn around and she picks up a guitar, and then she can have this contemporary rock and roll, live worship thing going on, and switches back and forth and around. And then she can sing her part, she can sing the part over top, she can sing the part underneath. She's like this vocal aerobic, the things, oh my gosh. And I just brag on about her. But the thing that she figured out it wasn't about the physical, it was about the unseen. And as that intertwines, then there's a beauty that it's the X factor that people are like, when people look at Alyssa and say, I want to lead worship like Alyssa, and I'm like, you haven't lived Alyssa's life.
Yep.
You haven't gone through Alyssa's transformations. The connection she's making is the intimacy between her and her God. Am I off?
You're very No, you're spot on. Two things. You're very affirming. Thank you. You're very kind. People are always very kind to me. Never feel like I deserve it, but thank you for your affirmation and your encouragement. I appreciate you. Two, we talk about it and we just see like where I'm at today. I have a lot of heart. There's struggles today too, but I want to encourage the person that's maybe like me 5 years ago.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
This happens with years of acknowledging. And so, I'm trying not to use like weird words, acknowledging and like knowing that the authority is not just mine. It's given to me by Christ.
Yeah.
That I can share it, and that I can empower other people that are around me, and that I can know them and see them, hopefully even just a tiny bit of the way that God sees me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It took a long time to get to the spot that you're talking about, not within the technical things.
Yep.
And to be clear, I can't sing 3 parts at once. I wish, but I can sing them separately back to back. Just in case anybody was confused about when you said that. I don't think anybody was. I'm just being smart.
Yeah. That's like
the not technical pieces. Yeah, the not technical pieces took years, and took years of walking with people that trusted me and that poured into me. And Steve, you're one of those people. So, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm humbled to be able to have gotten the opportunity to be able to have the time and the hours literally that we shared together. And I still, one of my fond memories, this will come out of left field, but was in the beginning stages of when you would come and we would worship together. And one of my fondest memories is every Sunday morning for the 11 o'clock service when Chad would walk into the sanctuary. And that was before you guys were married. And I knew Chad, and I knew how hard getting up on Sunday could be. And you even shared with me one time, you're like, you know why he comes to the sanctuary? And I said, why? You said he's inspired by the space. Like the space takes down the wall for him to be able to feel close to God. And I mean that, and you and I, we can probably go down a list of songs that you introduced to me or I introduced to you, and the work that we did together and the walking together and the sharing of heart in worship. We can talk about all that stuff, but one of my favorite memories that I'll always hold dear is when we're worshiping together and, you know, we've got our guitars strapped on and we're looking out at the congregation, but to get to see Chad walk through the door and then plop down on it would be our right-hand side over by the stained glass.
Yep.
And he'd post up and make sure there was room so that when you got done with worship that you guys would be able to sit together and stuff like that. And so, yeah, those are, and I think for any musician who's listening and is interested, whether in the church or out of the church, musician, the reminder would be the same work that it takes to craft the musical part. People just think, well, I can shred on guitar. Well, that doesn't mean you have a heart for God. It doesn't mean that, and you can tell the electric guitar players who have hearts for God and how they play. And what it really is about, you know. I think of Jed Smith. Oh my gosh,
he's the best.
I know, right? And
he's the best.
Yeah, and just humble, and has every reason, and could be first call recording musician in any city across the United States. So yeah, I just, as we bring this in, it has been, and I know you're saying all of this with an asterisk as well, and that is where you're going to be 5 years from now is not where you are right now, because you're committed to growth, and so that's a beautiful part.
Yeah, so I was thinking, then I asked you about your favorite book, so and then you talked about writing. So where do you get kind of your influence, inspiration when you're trying to be able to either write worship or whatever parts, where do you get some of your inspiration from?
That's a good question. So like music wise, I'll start with secular, because a lot of my inspiration comes from those sounds and that language, that non-churchy language that could possibly feel exclusive. It's never, I think, what it's intended to do, but it can feel like that if you're a seeker and you just don't know. You're like, what does this mean?
Right.
So Woods, brilliant female. The Aces, power girl band. Hyam, power girl band.
Wow.
Alice in Wonderland, super awesome chick. And I also just love Dave Matthews. I love Dave Matthews.
Oh.
I always will. Yeah.
Such a
There's some secular.
Such a story with Dave Matthews too. And I'm
Yeah.
so glad that we got you to spit that out, because now I've got some great music to like. I'll be like, I wonder what her ear candy is. All right, there we go. I get to listen to that stuff. Cool.
Woods has a song called Dots. If you do nothing else, anybody that's hearing me say that, if you do nothing else today, pop that song on real quick. It is hauntingly beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
Woods, Woodes, Dots.
Dots. All right.
It's from a 2018 album.
Very cool. Yeah, so we're Dave Matthews is famous in Chicago for. Do you know why he's famous in Chicago?
No.
You haven't heard this either? So his tour bus came through Chicago. They were doing a show, and his tour bus stopped over the bridge, the Chicago River, the one they turned green?
Yeah.
Well, their bus dumped their
No.
Yeah.
Nope.
Yep, they dumped it right over into the Chicago River.
Oh my gosh.
So as you can take multiple different directions with that same picture. So every once in a while what you hear is like, this is the anniversary of the Dave Matthews Band
Oh my God.
incident.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so
And they call it the air quote incident.
right, the incident.
Oh my word.
That's wild and ridiculous.
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I also do. I have enjoyed Dave Matthews Band for a long time, so I can connect with that. But it's funny how when I came to Chicago, they're like, "Yeah, do you know why Dave?" I'm like, "No." Same thing. Like, yeah. Like, okay.
Whoa.
Wow. All right.
Wow,
So
that is incredible.
All right.
I have to look
That's
up
the thing.
what day that is, but I know when it comes up sometimes across the radio or whatever it is, somebody will say, "Hey, this is Dave Matthews Day in Chicago." I'm like, what does that mean? Yeah. So now you know if you ever hear it.
Wow. And I'm going to piggyback
Now
with
you
a
know.
question, Alyssa. So you mentioned haunting. So do you find in music, like, is it the music? This is a chicken or egg kind of question. So is it the music? Is it what you're bringing in? You're hearing the notes, you're hearing the textures, you're hearing that. Is there that, or is it lyrics? I mean, like, talk to us about the roots of, like, when you're hearing things that like move you and shape you and you're discovering. Talk to me about how that all comes together for you.
Yeah. Okay. So when I hear things that move me, it is far less often about the words for me. It's about like the sounds that are legit washing over me into my ears, if you will, and how that makes me feel.
Yeah.
And less about the words. Now, when I write, what I don't have an ear for is thinking up those sounds that wash over me. I don't have an ear for making those up. I have an ear for chord structure and lyrics.
Yeah.
So as a writer, that's where my creativity is. But as a participant or as a receiver or a listener, it's about the sounds, not as much about the words.
Yeah.
Music speaking. I love the piece, like without anybody singing anything, sometimes music just speaks.
Yeah.
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 And sometimes speaks clearer and louder than anything with a word.
Right.
It takes me back to a shared musical experience with Alyssa.
Yeah.
When we saw Need to Breathe live.
Oh my gosh. They're so good.
Oh my word. And we were just, I mean, and Alyssa was crushing on the bass player all night long.
Crushing with my soon-to-be husband, right? Just hanging out. Wait, Were we married yet? No.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. Either way, Chad was like, yeah, I like him too.
Yeah.
Was that at Simon Estes?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was at Simon Estes. And we just, I don't know, on a whim, we were like, need to breathe. Oh, yeah. And we like got down there and, but gosh, yeah. And so if people are wondering, they're like, well, what do you mean feel the music? You know? Whew.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I talk about some other stuff that I'm listening to that's not secular?
Absolutely.
We won't skip over
Fire away.
Maverick City. What is even happening? So good, so soulful, so personal. They write so personally. My mom had cancer. I saw a miracle. I'm worshiping. I'm thanking. So like that in itself is cool and it's different. And I don't know a lot of other artists writing songs that are so deeply personal to the writer.
Yeah.
And they also drop songs like every 4 minutes. So if you're like, what should I listen to today? They probably have something new since the last time you opened Spotify or Apple Music. Funny.
Wow.
Creating some waves. Red Rocks Worship.
Okay.
Is so good. Red Rocks Worship. Church of the City. And then as far as like some individuals, Katie Torwalt is a slayer. Her voice is so killer. And Stephanie Gretzinger too.
Oh,
just unbelievable. And Stephanie is also very fun to listen to speak, preach, teach. Very brilliant, very spirit filled. Some might say a little like out there. I think not. I think she just leads in the spirit very confidently and doesn't worry about what the world thinks about it.
Huh. That's cool.
Yeah.
That is very
She's
good.
Great.
Yeah. Wow.
I just heard a guy, Ryan O'Neal. Are you familiar with Ryan O'Neal? I just heard him on, there was a podcast this morning, but I was kind of digging the sound. I want to like jump into it just to see, because he sounds lyrically appropriate. I mean, like just the music along with the lyrics. I mean, he's more, I think, lyrically centered than just musically centered. I mean, there's a blend of both of it, but I wanted to see if anyone has heard of Ryan O'Neal, because he was on. I was like, yeah. So if you want to look at that, you can take a look.
All right.
Okay.
We're going to give everybody on the podcast a fair warning. Hey, by the way, there is a wealth of information to dig and mine out of this place right here.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's see. Where do we want to go next to? Anything else you're inspired by or being inspired by?
I mean, I'm going to sound like redundant. My kids inspire me a lot. So next, like, I think that's about it. My family is always inspiring.
Yeah.
That's good to hear.
It is. It's awesome. Especially in the troubledness of world, when you see really the pandemic bringing out the worst in relationships, and things like that. It is encouraging to be able to have a voice say, you know what, I dig it.
Yeah,
I dig the relationship that I'm in, my partner, and my kids. So that's good.
Yeah. So now we're talking about partner and kids. We were looking at this big drop, especially in the pandemic, of women leaving the workforce during the pandemic so that they could stay home with kids and making sure that all of that. So how do you balance work life, home life? How do you make sure that there's that proper balance, or are you still kind of trying to work through it? So talk through that, how you're handling all of that.
Yeah. Okay. This felt easy 3 years ago. I saw Chad when I wasn't working, and he works like a normal Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. He has a quote normal job. I do not, as we all talked about, ministry comes with working nights. We just all understand that to be true. And I think before you even say yes to ministry, that is true.
Yeah.
It was super easy 3 years ago because we were only juggling 2 schedules. It was all right with Jasper because guilt is the wrong word. I didn't ever feel guilty about not being home because I didn't do anything wrong that would be a guilt thing. but I felt bad. Like I would be missing stuff. Not as much when there was only one, Chad plus one child. I have felt it deeply in the last year after my maternity leave. Chad is outnumbered. Chad is very capable, not worried about it, but I feel like I'm missing. I'm not only missing Chad. I'm not only missing Chad and Jasper. I'm missing Chad, Jasper, and Benji.
Yeah.
I'm still working on it. Phil, as you were asking that question, Steve and Phil can see me, but in case someone's just listening to the audio, I was like shaking my head, like probably real dramatically.
Yes.
I'm still trying to figure it out because my family expanding and growing, that's been difficult. More than one time, just to be really honest and vulnerable, I've prayed heavily about what it would look like for me to step back in a corporate space. I worked at Wells Fargo for 8 years before stepping into ministry, and doing that in order to protect nights and weekends with my family. Because right now I work, a couple nights a week and most Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
But I feel that I have not heard audibly loudly, but I have felt loudly that I'm not done with what I'm doing here yet.
Yeah.
So here I stay, and I continue to just try to navigate it the best that I can and be available as often as possible outside of work for all my boys, my man and my boys. Yeah. One thing that I was given permission to do this summer is rotating weekends. So myself and my co-person, we rotate weekends. Having every other weekend off this summer has been very life-giving for me and my family.
Yeah.
Now that is a season thing. Fall will be busy, and Christmas is busy all the time, regardless of where you work. So just that's real.
Yep.
Spring will be busy. Easter will be busy. But then I'm hoping we can fall into this being a normal summer thing.
Nice.
Just for some space. That's been good. The other thing with balancing family, work, faith things, I used to think that I had to separate my work time from my personal relationship with God time. And I've learned over the last couple of years that they can and should go hand in hand. I should not be doing this work without walking with God in it.
Yeah.
The work I do, I cannot do well if I'm not walking with him and inviting him in. Lead me. I need led by you.
Yeah.
So that I do the right thing and say the right thing and model the right things. Not that it's about being right, but that it's about being honoring.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good
answer.
Let's follow this work theme a little bit. And we often talk about the dualistic mind and what it means to be able to transcend to a place or to evolve the human mind into a place that's not dualistic in thinking, but is broader, more open and receiving to more than one option. But I'm going to dualism right now.
Okay.
So A versus B. You mentioned that you worked at Wells Fargo, corporate land, and so that's would be in this context of for the listener. Let me say this: I don't believe that there is a higher calling to be in church work as a believer versus a job in corporate America versus a job as a blue-collar worker, industry worker versus, any job. If you're a believer, I think what you just said is that you need God to lead you, and this is a joint effort thing, okay?
Yeah.
But if we want to say secular versus religious institution, and we dualism mind think on this, one versus the other, talk to us as two white dudes with beards who have been raised in a life of privilege. I mean, we've confessed this over and over again on this podcast. Mm-hmm. And what we're not, although people who know us would probably say, you guys are just a couple girls anyway. But I don't have the ability to give birth or carry a baby, and it is different. So between secular and between church, go there as a woman and just help Phil and I understand what's it like to be a woman in the workplace and in this culture, and do you find one is easier than the other, and are there things around that you can just kind of unfold or unpack for us?
Yeah. Okay. There's so many ways that we can go. When I started at Wells Fargo, it was very entry level. I was like in a call center, right? Had to work my way up, wanted to work my way up, not had to. I wanted to. I'm an Enneagram 3 achiever. What is next? What is next? Alongside that comes performer, which can be great, but can also be very unhealthy. I'm very aware of it.
Sure.
Kind of makes the job that I do now a little challenging in that. It's a lot of self-reflection on why I'm doing what I'm doing, make sure I keep it in check. Rewind. I didn't ever feel, I cannot recall a single time that I felt that I was treated different by anybody at Wells Fargo because of being a female. I just can't, which is great. I don't have any wild stories to tell you about. I'm glad. Maybe that means we're getting better, or maybe that means we're not, and I don't know it, or I'm not seeing the things that aren't better. So that's like a 2. That's like either or, probably both and. I saw senior leadership at Wells Fargo at the time. It was men and women, pretty equally represented. Probably a little more on the dude side, but whatever. Progress is progress. We're not there, but progress is progress. Flipping to the church space, I feel like this has been a battle for years and years. Should women be leading? Should women be pastors? Should women be able to say or sing anything from up front? One, the Bible tells us yes, and I will fight with anybody verbally and lovingly all day that tries to tell me that Scripture says something different. Call me. I'll give you my number. And we can talk about women in the Bible that we're teaching and crushing it alongside of people like Paul and Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that I'm not even talking about where I work. I'm talking about that and every big C church, all the churches all over the world.
Yeah.
There should be more women up front. There should be no reason that it is not 50-50. There's no reason. And it's not yet. And I feel discouraged about it. And I just try to use my voice to lead well and build up other women to lead well. So I mentor a couple girls, 15, 19, 25, 24, because I want them to know that they have a place up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
we could talk about this for a long time. So
Right.
I'm just not.
Yeah, no, I just, again, it's, we try to have the voice of all people, on our podcast, and we come back to the part where, hey, we're in our first year and we're just getting legs on as far as connecting with others and stuff. And when I reached out to you, I just knew not only are you well thought, well read, and I can respect what goes on between your ears, but I also know that we need the voice of women to be present, in the podcast and stuff. And so when people are like, why are you guys always interviewing each other and where's the voice of women? And I'm like, ha, listeners of podcast, this is the answer we bring. And then there's some people like, yeah, but the woman that you had on the podcast, she's like this Jesus freak. And I'm like, unashamedly, I will not apologize. The answer is yes. And you can, you can be able to do that, and we're okay with it. So, yeah. Well, that helps.
I just noticed even there is a shift that is happening. Even you look at the SBC, largest denomination in the United States.
Southern Baptist Church for
Southern
people
Baptist
who are listening
Convention.
in Africa.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So Saddleback, which was their I think their largest church in the SBC,
Sure,
is now put women up front teaching. And now the SBC, they're like, well, we're going to have this conversation because we need to remove them because they're putting, and it's like, so this conversation is happening, and I think that they intentionally did that to make a statement to be able to say, we want to have this conversation, and if this is what it's going to take in order to do that, then this is what we're going to do. And even if you're going to say you're going to kick us out, like, Saddleback can, live on its own. Even if if you're going to say you don't want us with you, that's cool. Like, we can exist.
Yeah.
But this conversation needs to happen. People like Beth Moore, who was a part of the SBC and said, you know what, no more, I can't do it. People are they were brutally going after her.
Yeah.
And so she finally said, I can't do it. Like, I'm not going to fight anymore. I'm going to do this thing because God's called me to. But yeah, so I kind of love those conversation pieces that are coming in now. And it needs to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that when it comes to equality in the workplace, then we have to ask the men to start asking questions in their own mind, and that is, are you treating women differently? Like, in the hire, are you treating women differently where you're like, oh, well, we'll go ahead and pay them this much? Well, I would say take a look at the research and see, what would you pay a dude who's being hired for the same position, and then make that be your marker. Don't be like, oh, well, she's got a husband that's working a full-time job, and so since we're going to give her a part-time job and we're going to pay her 70% of what the going rate is, so that why? Now, speaking in church language, I mean, ultimately, you're saying because of your budget, and somebody's justifying it in front of God by saying, well, it gives us more money for missions. That's bullshit. Okay, I'm sorry for all the Christians who are listening to this, but I'm going to just tell you right now, this is bullshit.
Right.
The reality is that if you look in the church pew, talk to me about how many women are coming to church versus how many men are coming to church. When you're looking at the church, the church volunteers,
Right.
when you're looking at the church volunteers who are showing up, well, they're like, yeah, but there are all these moms that are raising their kids, so they have more time to be available. You know what? They probably ought to just stay home and be able to nurture their own children instead of taking care of the work off of your back of what you don't want to do at the local church by asking volunteers to be able to fill in. Do you think I'm passionate about this?
Steve's fired up.
The reality is, until men become advocates for women, they're just being a bunch of jerks. For what? For their own pocketbook, for their own wealth, and this is anti-Christ. It's 666. Mark it, throw it on your forehead, and put it in your wallet. I'm calling you out. That's the deal. And so, and we probably, I don't even know, I'm not even paying attention to the clock. All right, so it's 10 after 12. Just, hey, whenever you feel like you have to go, you're marked off until 1, right, Alyssa?
Yeah, I've got plenty of time, but hold on a second. Anybody that feels offended about the last 3 minutes of what you just said, I would challenge them lovingly to check their stuff so hard before worrying and being so offended about the things that you just said that are true, that are real, that are today. I feel strongly about that because everybody's got their different thoughts. I just want to pause for a second. And if you're super offended about anything Steve just said, I invite you to do some deep work into what about that is so offensive for you.
Yeah. Right. He said bullshit.
Yeah, some people, and that's where
he swore.
Right.
He swore.
Yeah, right.
But let's not just dismiss everything out. I'm just kidding. I swear to. Don't tell anybody. But things I don't do up front when I'm leaving. Swear.
Right.
That's good.
Yeah.
But everything that you said was really powerful, and I'm thankful that white men like you two are talking about this because not enough people are.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think Alan Hirsch? You familiar with Alan Hirsch?
I know, I vaguely know the name,
yeah,
but see, this is why I love having you as a podcast partner because you know this stuff. Yeah. So Alan Hirsch.
He was a guy that talked. I mean, he was talking 20 years ago about the missional movement within the church.
Okay.
And just being able to live as, and he said that they're already years ago, he's saying, like, if we don't do something about women and incorporating more than just like, hey, can you teach our children, or hey, can you plan a party, like if we don't do something to incorporate this, like the church is gonna be more underground, because it's gonna start dying. Like people are gonna be like, I'm not connecting. And I think that it's been a big part of what's been missing. And so some people have said there's been a feminization of the church, but I think when we're not incorporating voices, and yet, like, who's been leading the feminization of the church then? It's dudes. Like, so they're saying, well, men aren't connecting anymore. Well, all right, so why? What's really the thing? I mean, so it's a great conversation piece to be able to say, like, we're missing out on all kinds of dimensions. Why? And I think this is a big part of it.
I think if we go back to, I don't know, I'll bounce this off Alyssa. Alyssa, when you think of the creation account in Genesis, are you drawn to the part that God made man but took women and created woman from the rib? Like, is there a disconnection that God actually created woman?
No.
Okay.
That's not something that I'm drawn to. That is not something that bothers me at all.
No. I wonder if, like, people are like, so when
like man is superior because God creates man and then from man makes woman. Like, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm like that. Here's where I'm really going.
Mm-hmm.
God created man and woman in its image.
Yeah.
So why do we miss out on the feminine face of God? It's because a bunch of dudes translated the Greek and put it into the male person.
Mm-hmm.
All the pronouns. Yeah. See where I'm going with that now?
I knew you were going somewhere. I was trying to figure it out.
I was trying to figure out how to get there.
I was not tracking clearly.
And so I think the superiority, the chauvinism, the male centeredness of the church stems out of, the part. But if we're going to say that humanity, we're going to Christianize this down to that humanity is made in the image of God. That's what makes humans so special, is because we're made in the image of God. Well, then why aren't we talking about the female side of God?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lovely pastor friend who refers to the Holy Ghost as she.
Mm-hmm.
I was literally going to, whenever it got to a good point, to be like, what about God the Father, God the Son? What about the Spirit as feminine?
Really?
It's something that I've been walking with for a number of years. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't talk about it because I'm not trying to be divisive.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody's relationship with the Spirit is very highly personal, and it should be. But this is something that I've been exploring or experiencing / navigating for probably 2 years now.
Yeah.
Spirit as feminine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, so I'm going to bounce back to books.
Oh.
Broken Horses by Brandi Carlile. Have you read it yet?
Nope.
You need to.
I can write it down though.
Oh yeah.
What's it about?
Write it down.
Her life. It's a biography of Brandi Carlile.
Okay.
Yeah. And so here we have a lesbian woman who is and has tried from outside of the church to have great faith, but because of growing up in a small town, then was ostracized. Actually, she got turned away from her baptism on the day of her baptism. because she just was outwardly knew that she was a lesbian at an early age, and so anyway. But Brandy Carlisle, of course, musically is very, very just right down my vein, my lane, and stuff. And oh my gosh, a life. Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I'm receiving a phone call from my good friend at 888.
It's important.
Yeah. They call every day about this time.
Okay.
Not really sure.
Is it your car warranty?
It is.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's ready for...
It's always my car warranty too.
So anyway, but Phil just finished reading the book.
Yeah.
Absolutely loved it. From an inspirational part as a creative, oh my gosh, it's just right up there. And so would want to share that.
I'll check that out.
Yeah,
check that out.
It's a beautiful story just to understand. I mean, even in where Steve connects, and you'll understand this. I mean, like, she understands mysticism. Like, she's like, everything's telling me to like run from this whole Jesus thing, and yet somehow it just always is back at her center. And it's always something that she's drawn to, and it's always something that continues to come back again. You know, so to me, it's like the beauty of what is happening through her, and just, you know, even that it comes out in her vulnerability with her lyrics and trying to bring that. Yeah. So to me, it's a great book.
Is she the one that just released? Did she just release an album like a couple months ago?
I believe
is that
so.
her, Steve?
I don't know about her newest album. She won an award for the Song of the Year.
That was 2019, I believe.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
She's yeah.
I wrote her name down.
Okay.
I'm absolutely gonna look her up. You guys are both on Instagram. Phil, are you on Instagram?
Yeah.
Maybe I just added you. I might have known that. Anyways, Naked Pastor is an account that has 85,000 followers. I was trying to find what I saw the other day. I was just reminded of this as you were sharing a little bit about what that book is about in her life. He's an artist. In addition to other things, there was a flock of sheep, and the flock of sheep was saying, it was 99 sheep, right? It was a couple of them. You could see them. It was like, no, wait. We sent him away. And Jesus is on the other side with a sheep that is blue with some pink in the middle. And Jesus is like, whatever he says, something about how he found her. Beautiful. Yeah. I shared it unapologetically.
Yeah.
But I know that stuff like that can be sensitive for whoever you are. So it's just, that was a good follow for me.
Yeah. Cool.
And just love people. What is wrong with everybody?
You know,
like that sounds like a lot, but just why do we make caring about other humans such a hard thing? I don't understand it.
I speechless.
Okay, next.
We're asking. We just keep asking that question. How?
Yeah.
Now there are people that are hard to love.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't negate that. Why can't we just? Why is the church so hell-bent on not loving? I don't know. And that's not all people, and that's not all people in churches,
no.
You know, but
nope.
It's just, it creates me to a point of speechlessness. I'm going to stop. Phil, ask another question. Please.
Yeah, Phil, please save this.
I know. Yeah. That's it. Oh yeah, I mean, there's
people are like, move on from the awkward moments. You guys are tripping over yourselves. This is so awkward. Now my ears hurt. I'm gonna shut this off.
And I seriously love sitting in this discomfort with people, regardless of what their personal things are and where they fall on any line of any vein of any kind of thinking. I love sitting in this with people.
Yeah.
Not that a podcast is like the spot to do it, but
No, but
I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that gets us to things that make us feel uncomfortable. Now we're saying, so
Yep.
why does something make me feel uncomfortable? Why does, this conversation, maybe some people out there like, this makes me uncomfortable. Well, why does it? Like,
yeah,
dig into your uncomfortableness for a moment.
yeah,
So Steve and I spent a lot of time, talking about the, like Black Lives Matter movement. And,
Yeah.
the things that we're really picking up after, George Floyd's death and
murder.
right, his murder. Yeah, I mean, we can call it that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
Yep.
yeah, for sure. So why is it that it made some people uncomfortable? And
Yeah.
why is it the ongoing conversation still has people trying to defend some of the things that they have known before? And yeah, so that's it's kind of the point of what we do on the podcast is like we're digging into stories, but we're also trying to understand like there's growth and evolution in people. Like there should be. And you should be challenged where you're at currently, no matter where it is, because you're saying, how can we continue to move forward? How can we continue to see things differently? So where have you found yourself to be uncomfortable before? What have you done with your uncomfortableness?
Okay. I do conflict easy, so I feel like I'm not uncomfortable a lot of times. I know that's not like that was not the segue. You weren't asking me about how do I handle conflict. I think discomfort that I experience is an awareness and acknowledgement that I don't know enough about fill in the blank. Like that I just don't understand it. Which means I need to ask questions like what Steve asked me about being a woman working at Wells Fargo and working at Hope. Like I need to be asking people questions about their lives so that I can understand their histories and their cultures and their experiences. So my discomfort comes from an ignorance that sometimes I don't know is there.
That's good. Yeah, Steve, do you know what you do with your uncomfortableness?
Well, I think for me, one of the things as I season into this new season that I'm in, like I'm giving away one of my tricks that I use. And one of the tricks that I use is I'll get phone calls from people and I continue to be a counselor, and listen, and I'll be listening, and or they'll say something, and I'm just listening, and all of a sudden I'll be like, "Are you still there?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're still talking." I mean, like I don't need to march all over this, I mean, like, well, how come you haven't said anything? I'm like, there was not a direct question yet,
Yeah.
And so, like, I make people uncomfortable by listening. And so then, it ends up, just being that thing where creating opportunities for non-comfort allow people to be able to get in deeper. And when they're taken back or it is unsettling for them, it's in that uncomfortableness that I find you can get deeper than what's really being shared. And so oftentimes creating uncomfortableness by being silent is one of the tools in my little relational belt. And people are like, and quite frankly, that's totally different than 23-year-old Steve. 23-year-old Steve would, I would talk over people. I would interrupt. There's times in the podcast we both get so excited about topic that we end up talking over each other. And
We do.
I'm just like, I'm not even practicing being a good host right now. I'm just, I'm all over this place. I'm so excited. Can I learn more about Doctor Who?
Right.
Kind of thing. But, and but when it comes to relationally, and stuff like that, I and I may go back and align with Alyssa in regards to in since opposite things happen, like I'm like, oh, I never do this, but I'll probably end up doing this a lot in the next 2 weeks or whatever. But it's really self-reflective of, gosh, I don't even know what to say about that, and so you just come back. I'm enough of an introvert that when people come in isolation too, with the pandemic and stuff like that, I have a hard time really being in tune and staying focused with people in person right now. Like, that's something that I'm getting, it makes me uncomfortable. And so, like, at church this last weekend, there was a really great group of people out worshiping together and stuff. And now people want to be social. And I'm like, yeah, I've been alone for about a year and a half, and I've been uprooted out of my little seat of 2 decades in Des Moines and all the people that I would know and be social with and whatever. And how crazy is this? We're driving back from South Dakota. We stop at the gas station just outside of Cedar Falls, where UNI is. I walk in, I'm going to Hardee's to get a turkey club sandwich, and a lady comes behind the counter and says, "Hey, Coble, how are you doing?"
What?
Yes. And Amy's like, I can't even take you through the state without somebody knowing you,
Right.
Ended up being a lady I went to Dominican on a mission trip with. And she recognized me. Now, notably, having the beard, does, have you stick, and even with a face mask on, and stuff like that. But, people, in Des Moines, when you're in Des Moines, I mean, I walk down a city block and, going to typically run into someone that I've seen or met or played in front of or talked to or blah, 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 blah. But in isolation, what's making me uncomfortable is people.
Just like everything.
Oh, you want to talk? I don't know if I have the social I'm used to talking to Phil. I mean, and and we banter in the questions, or we dump information on each other when we haven't seen each other for a week, or whatever. It was like, I got this laundry list of and major download. But then it gets into this, hey, you're not 6 feet away from me and I'm uncomfortable. And so, okay, look people in the eyes, listen, answer questions. Are you really answering the question? Or are you really, Steve, are you thinking about your escape route? I'm like, yes, I'm consistently thinking about my escape route. And so,
that's to listen if that's what you're thinking about, right?
It is. It's terrible. Yeah. So that's my confession.
I feel like
you mentioned that. So yeah, go ahead.
We're all excited to respond about that. I feel like what you've said is a good reminder for me as someone who doesn't have a big bubble, who wants to hug everybody, that there are a lot of Steves, and that I can be better about being slow to try to get in someone's space. You know what I mean? We're all so different. And that makes us so beautiful. So that was a good reminder for me to hear that. I serve with 10 volunteers on a weekend. They're not all huggers. They also know that my bubble is tiny. but I know who my Steves are. So I can be kind and loving to them by giving them a little bit of space. Yeah. So thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I noticed there was something that both of you mentioned about the uncomfortable, is that you don't mind having and ushering in for other people. Like, we're going to be uncomfortable right now.
Oh yeah.
And it's okay to be here. And it's okay
Yeah.
for us to sit in this for a little bit. And I mean, Steve, you talked about it as a technique for, I'm just going to listen. And they're like, this listening without trying to, jump in and say all kinds of stuff that may or may not have anything to do with it, just so you're breaking the uncomfortable. But Alyssa, you said the same thing. Like, I don't mind sitting with somebody, like this topic or this hard issue. I don't mind sitting with this and saying, yeah, let's deal with the uncomfortable. Then let's sit in it. And so I think it's a great tactic to be able to understand that there might be some people who are going to approach things and say, well, this is uncomfortable. All right, then let's sit in it instead of avoiding it.
Yeah. And I don't pursue to create conflict or pursue to create uncomfortableness.
Yeah.
I'm just, when it comes to conversations that I'm involved in, that I'm totally not afraid of. And really, I'll ask the leading question after silence is that really what you're thinking about? Like, that's as far as you're going with that thought, or is there something? Is there something behind that? And I had a situation come up last month, and my mom and my wife both were like, "Hey, how are you going to deal with this stressor and uncomfortableness?" And I'm like, "Oh, I mean, again, 23-year-old Steve wouldn't know how to navigate it." But I've sat in enough board meetings with people who don't like decisions that I've made. I've sat, in enough conversations of, hey, change has to occur, and so this needs to happen, and navigated those things. I'm like, I'm not worried about that part. And quite frankly, uncomfortableness is a great tool of learning. And people, yeah. So, and we keep just poking the bear.
Yeah. Can I talk about the Bible? I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I talk about a story in the Bible?
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
You love Jesus.
Did you guys not hear? I'm just kidding. So dramatic. I'm thinking of the discomfort that Ananias. I'm really good at pronouncing any words and names in the Bible, so cool. If that's not it, whatever. Ananias, when God's like, I need you to get the scales off Paul's eyes, and he's like, did you not hear that Saul is literally persecuting dudes like me? And God's like, I don't care. How uncomfortable was Ananias? So uncomfortable. That went against everything that he thought was like what he should be doing or who he should not be associating with. I think that's a good example for us.
Wow. Yeah. Way to drop that right in our laps.
Well,
holy cow. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I don't think Ananias was like, oh yeah, that sounds like a great way to spend my day, hanging out with a guy that wants to kill me. Probably not. Well, this was like right after Saul's conversion. So he was not, for people that are listening that don't know, he was not a believer. He was literally making sure people that were Christians or Jesus followers were found and persecuted.
Well, killed.
Literally, not just persecuted in terms of men. He straight up kills them.
Yeah.
He is finding these people to kill. He encounters God. God puts scales on his eyes and he's like, go here. I'm going to send this guy to help you. This guy who thinks you're probably just going to try to kill him.
Yeah.
Heyo.
And so one of the things that really, when we start asking people to look within or look to themselves, you can start asking different questions. And if people are like, I don't even know what the questions are that I should ask. Question number one, how do you say that you love women, you say that you hold up women, you say that you're for women's equality. Who are the voices of women that you're listening to consistently that help frame you on where women are at today? That's a great question. You can take it another step further in regards to, what, you know, who Phil and I talk about who are the black people or who are the people of color that you are having conversations with, if not daily, weekly. You're like, I maybe not weekly. How about in any given month? Are you, are you pursuing conversations with people who are outside of your gender, who are outside of
Yeah.
your color? And so when you look at the empty set, you're like, but why are we talking about this problem? I don't have a problem with this. And I would say, well, take a look and see if the empty, what is not present in your current life, and then start being intentional. That's another Christianese word that is just, but be intentional in pursuit of when, don't cross the street when someone of color is walking down towards you.
Yeah.
Look that person in the eye and smile and say good afternoon or good morning, or hey, I hope you have a great day today. I mean, like, there's, it doesn't have to be, oh, I need to be BFFs with, dot dot dot. But I mean, so then you ask that question, what about people of other religious faiths?
Yep.
Why how many Muslim friends do you have? You're like, well, I don't have Muslim friends. Why not? Well, Steve, don't you know they're terrorists? No, all Muslims are not terrorists. And so, I mean, like, you would have to get to know a Muslim, someone of the faith of Allah, to be able to get to know the heart of a person who just, I mean, that's like saying, I'm German, so I hate Jews. I mean, like, I ask, if you have a question as a listener and you say, I don't even know what my blind spots are. There goes the phone that's not ringing now on the floor. I don't know what my blind spots are. Well, then, have a conversation with somebody that you are close to and say, hey, can you tell me? But I would ask the leading questions of, look at the empty set, look at what's not available. Look at what you're not doing, and raise awareness, because the goal is to dismantle dualism. That because I'm a male, then I need to be an enemy to all women. Which, I mean, that's very drastic dualism.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, with that, I'll stop. My rant. My question rants off.
Well, thanks for the yeah. So where do you want to go next when we're talking about
That's a good question.
Our transitional questions are hard stops.
You're right.
It's like, yeah, whoa, where do we want to go next?
Yeah, because I think it's a good direction on that. So when you're thinking about, you mentioned Enneagram 3. And so what gives you, I mean, like, just there are some people who don't know Enneagram. So tell them what kind of drives a 3, and what kind of puts you in that camp as a 3, and what gives you your motivation then, and all of that stuff. So a little bit of breakdown of that.
Yeah. Okay. So my caveat right now is that I'm not like a professional Enneagram person. So someone that is hearing me is probably gonna be like, that's fine. This is my interpretation of it. However, I'm just gonna say that because some people can be a little finicky about the Enneagram and what you say. So for me, as someone who identifies as a 3, as an achiever, as a performer, as a people pleaser, to a fault occasionally when I'm not healthy or not looking at where my blind spots are, I find a lot of value and worth in being affirmed by people, and being successful, and being seen, and being heard. And those are good things. I think that those are good. I think it's fine to want people to be like, well, that's a good job. But when I'm seeking affirmation, when I'm putting that in place of things that are good for me and healthy for me, that's when it that's when it can get a little wonky. So I do have to be very careful, because part of my job is being on a platform in front of people, seeing me, listening to me, and some reaching out after and complimenting me. I have to be really careful with all of that.
Yeah.
Like really careful. And self-reflection a lot more than maybe someone who's not a 3, that doesn't have the same kind of stuff that I do.
Yeah.
About needing to be affirmed.
Yeah. So when you're saying you have to be careful then about what drives you, is it the need for the kind of the backing approval, or is there taking that drive and saying I've got to figure out a different path over here, because if this is driving me, then I'm going to do and say what it's going to take in order to get it. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So having that all in check is a good thing then.
Yeah.
And it's hard and it's exhausting, and any kind of self-reflection can be a little daunting. It's not the most fun work that we do.
Right. Yeah. Hey, which leads me to another question to ask, Alyssa. So when you've talked about your self-work, have you been a student of yourself to do self-work, or have you had professionals be a part of your life and some of your self-work? I mean, talk to people about your path, and as you talk about that, what that means to you.
Yeah. I go to therapy every other week, sometimes every week, depending on the season. I found someone new during the pandemic, because I was having a hard time not being around people as an extrovert. I was having a very hard time. And that was even with me getting to be around a select group of people, like every other weekend, to record, to do a worship service, to broadcast over the weekend. It was still hard for me because my engagement was different, and with far fewer people, that was really hard for me as an extrovert. So I think therapy is for everybody. I don't think there's something, air quote, wrong with you because you're seeing a therapist. I think you're willing to look inside and see what needs to be dusted off and worked on when you walk with a therapist. And I think it's really healthy work. I think it is a very kind and loving thing to do for yourself, to see a therapist.
Nice.
Because some stuff will probably get unearthed that you literally don't remember or think it's like not a conscious thing, but it's subconscious, and it lives here. It like lives in your brain and in your headspace and in your heart, and you don't know it. You don't know it until someone that is trained to help you discover it helps you discover it.
Yeah.
Therapy is important.
It's true.
Yeah. Glad you said that, because we have highlighted mental health before. So
good.
Right.
I'm glad.
Yeah, because we find that it's important to be able to say, you know what, like some things that we shouldn't have to be able to try to dig through ourselves.
Yeah.
Sometimes what we need is other people, and yes, even trained schooled people who have gone through that. I also like to highlight support groups, and some people think that those are a crutch, but I'm like, no, like support groups are good, because you have shared experiences, or at least shared emotion, shared stuff, and you're like, hey, like somebody actually, I feel like they know me already, even if you've just met. I think those are great things to be able to highlight and make sure, like what you said, like you don't have to feel like you're odd if you're seeing a counselor, therapist, a psychologist, whatever. So thanks for highlighting that.
And then I do have a couple of mentors that are quite a bit older than me on purpose. They have a lot of life experience that I just do not have. So one is a female that used to be the women's like discipleship person at Hope. You guys may have heard her name, Mary Steer.
Okay.
She's the one that used to work in the newspaper industry. She was the only female for like decades doing the work she was doing. And then moved into ministry. I don't even think she calls what we do mentoring. We like hang out as friends, but I'm like, Mary, you mentor me so much. She's such a safe place for me, and I'm thankful for her. And then another one, his name is Michael Megason. I love him dearly. He's like a spiritual partner And that is so fun to get to walk with him. He kind of reminds me of you, Steve.
Probably based on
So,
proximity, right?
But walking with people that are quite a bit older than me has been really important to me. Yep. Similarly, there are people that I'm walking with that are 15. I think I mentioned it earlier that I'm learning from her. I'm learning from her so much because she's 20 years younger than me. She has different life experience than I do. Yeah. Not as much. I'm not talking about length. I'm talking about her experiences are different than mine when I was 15, 20 years ago. The world is different. Yeah. So therapy is great. Put yourself around people that are in different life stages than you. And then Steve, to just nod what you said, put yourself around people that look different than you.
Yeah. It's good.
It is good.
So, and for the record, what we're coming back to is we're coming back to the very thing that can be difficult is the very thing that we need. And so people, you know, and so Richard Rohr in his book about the dance talks about how that the Trinity is such a beautiful picture because left to two people, you have a couple, but when the third person is introduced, then it becomes community. And so then dualism is able to be set aside or at least worked through. And that's where, like, I mean, even in an interview with the podcast, I believe why people enjoy that so much is not that the topics that Phil and I talk about on our PS edition, you know, kind of things, aren't poignant and aren't informational, but I believe that it's speaking to a root within the heart that longs for community. And so it's seeing community at work. Here we are asking questions, and people are like, I don't even know how to do that, you know? And I would say, well, I think you have three really good teachers right here that have given you clues. And so be a student of this podcast and say, what was really going on there? Oh, Alyssa's a student because she likes to read. She's also a participant in creativity, you know, so she's writing, and as she's listening to music is informing her body. And so when she does lyrics and puts melodies together, then, you know, that part, you know, and then, you know, we've got Phil asking the questions, you know, and you know, for people who don't know, the questions were thought up a couple days ago, you know, and it's just navigating and working that through, you know, and then, you know, I'm asking questions, but also asking questions along on topic with what's going on. So as you're listening to people, you're able to get involved in a conversation and then start asking questions. And so, and it's, if I'm going to give away most of my skill set, I'll give this one away. As you're listening to people, don't be thinking about how you want to respond to them. If you really, people love to talk. So ask a question that helps them keep talking longer. And then as you hear them, then when they finally get exhausted, and then there is that really awkward, uncomfortable silence, then you can ask the other leading question. Is that really what you wanted to get to, or is there something behind that?
Is there something underneath? That's right.
Yeah.
So we're coming towards the end. I just want to be able to give a little bit of space, Alyssa. We kind of always, you know, kind of end with that question about, you know, like if you know, thinking back to your 21-year-old self and what kind of words of wisdom would you share? But I mean, if you're trying to be able to take a moment now and just sharing wisdom, it could be to your younger self, but it could just be if you want someone to hear something today.
Yeah.
You know, what is that wisdom that you would share?
Yeah. So 20-year-old me was a wreck. Just to be nodding to the fact that we're being really transparent about everything. I was a disaster when I was 21, and I met Steve not long after that. So Steve got a little bit of disaster, Alyssa.
That's true.
So thanks and Phil, you did too. You both did. Thanks for loving me.
It's the reason why I put that question there is because I knew it would let her be able to say, hey, everybody, all the put together me that you see, yeah.
It's taken a lot of work, and it's going to take a lot more work.
Yeah.
I'm not there yet. I hope I never get there, because that'd be boring.
Right. It's true.
To arrive, I guess.
It's true.
Right.
So to 20-year-old me or 20-year-old me, the things that you think that you need are often not what you need. That relationship won't make you whole. That person is not your identity. That drink will not erase it. Just don't medicate. Some stuff in moderation is fine. I am not someone that's like, don't drink that. That's not me. I love wine. It is delightful. It is a treat for me. So that's not what I'm saying. So I don't want anybody to hear that. That's not what I'm saying. Your wholeness will not be found in the people that you're around.
Yep.
Don't give them that power.
Yep. Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great advice, because that's something that's also learned and lived.
Yeah.
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 Yep.
I have another question for Alyssa before we let her go.
You're dropping
And
it.
it's not on the list, but I do believe in the multiple degrees of Kevin Bacon. And so what I'm wondering about is, Alyssa, do you have someone that you would feel comfortable referring to us, a woman for us to interview, that would not pick up where you left off, but would be a wonderful introduction as a female voice to Cut Daisies and Unicorns? And if you're like, you know what, I want to think about that, and I will let you know, we've got ways to be able to communicate, and we can, down the road be able to just have that person on, and then like kind of time travel backwards to your interview and say, hey, Alyssa passed this name on. But I want you to be able to, I've really enjoyed our interview, and I would
Me too.
love to have somebody that is in your proximity that we don't know, that we could continue a conversation with.
Yeah. Do you want me to tell you right now?
Yeah. If you know who it is, I do.
Yeah. I think so there's two people that come to mind for me. One is the woman that I meet with.
Okay.
That's quite a bit older than me, Mary Steer. She is really brilliant. She's a white female. The other one that comes to mind is Jed Smith's wife, Michelle.
Oh.
Smith. Her father is Japanese and her mother is white. So like she sits on the board for a couple different like cultural events in Des Moines. She's really brilliant. She's really well spoken. Recently she was just in like 30, how old is she? Close to my age. 40 under 40. She is really amazing. Yeah. Both of them would be really lovely.
Okay.
They have very different experiences, so it might be worth trying to pursue them both.
Yeah. That actually such a wealth of information and knowledge.
It is.
Yeah. I could get a hold of Michelle and have her contact information. But could you go ahead and send us the other information, and we'll reach out, and then that way. I'm taking a different approach. This is going to make you giggle as a project manager, corporate person. And I'm taking a different approach to this next season of 10 episodes, and that I've already marked out the dates that we're going to show the episode. I have all right, now here's the topics, and here are the dates when we would need to record by, and these are the dates when it'll be published, and then the topic and all of this stuff. And all I have to do is take that handwritten note and convert it to an Excel spreadsheet, and then be able to work through that, so I can schedule ahead of time.
That sounds very wise and very structured.
Way to go, creative. What are you planning today?
I know, that's what I was like, where does that play out in the creativity of Steve's brain?
Yeah, administration is forced upon me by the universe.
Right.
Yeah. So.
By the universe.
Oh, yeah. Hey. Alyssa, so glad to be able to have you on with us, and man, what a great conversation. Thank you so much for making time. We've been chasing around this rabbit for at least 2 months, haven't we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hot minute.
A hot minute. All right.
Yeah, it's
You
been
guys-
great.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for trusting me. I know you're not just going to ask anybody to be on here, so I feel honored to have gotten to share just some pieces of my heart with you guys.
That's awesome.
I appreciate your time and your
Yeah.
heart to be able to share in that. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right. And as we would say to round up any podcast, we would let people know that if you've got questions, want to explore something further, make sure you reach out to us.
Right.
Got the cutdaisiesandunicorns@gmail.com email that you can be able to utilize. We still keep asking people to interact with us, and they aren't. So, I mean, as far as more questions, we're like, no, if this conversation's going for an hour and a half, I don't want to interact with you at all. I'm like, yeah, nice, exactly. But
Yeah.
to that, I will say, Alyssa, thank you, and we'll talk someday. See each other sometime.
We will.
And tell Chad we said hello, okay?
I will.
All right.
All right. Take care.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.